Hello, welcome back to another episode of my controversial tier lists. Since last episode, we had Corvus come out and become playable in ranked, and we had a new patch with a couple changes to tanks, some DPS characters, a bunch of items, and another ranked split. So we're going to start off with Corvus, since he was brand new and we didn't really get to judge him last time. I think he came out and he definitely shook things up a lot. Immediately was a really good pick, a really contested pick, and sometimes a ban. A lot of the times a ban right now in Diamond Plus ranked, from what I can see. And he's a really good character in the pro circuit as well. So he came out really strong. His double pocket and the lifesteal that he gives is just pretty crazy right now. So he's going to be S tier. He's definitely a picker ban. Pretty cool, but a bit overtuned, I think. Hopefully we'll see changes to him soon. Androxus was kind of came out of nowhere. He's kind of been at a decent level for a while, right? But he's never been like too crazy. But now you can kind of get away with like picking him without knowing like what you're really up against. He just seems like a really solid flank character right now. Benefits a lot from the meta healers like the Corvus, the Jennas, and in general I think is just pretty powerful. We're gonna put him A for now. I think he's definitely like an A tier DPS. He's not you can probably ban him sometimes if you know you're against a good Andrew player, but for the most part he's just a solid flank pick. Skye, nothing really changed. She still doesn't do a good job as a flank. She's pickable if you want to like cheese their tank players, I guess. If you want to run bolts and just get free kills, you can definitely run it on certain maps like a Bright Marsh, but overall as like a solo queue player you're probably better off not picking Skye. Her heal legendary isn't that good either, so she kind of doesn't do a good job of any of like her two roles. So Skye D for now. I'll see if I bump her up with the rest of the, once we put the rest of the flanks on the board. Strix, I'm gonna put him B for now, because although he's pretty good, you don't really contest him a lot. Like, you don't have to get the Strix, you don't need to ban the Strix. If they get the Strix, you can just pick the Kin, for example, or just like play around it. But he's a super solid pick for DPS, just like an average like kind of pick. Like, you can pick him and do really good, you can pop off, but you're not really like, it's not OP. It's not something you really are going to go for every game or first pick. He's good on his certain maps. You can run him on smaller maps too if you play him aggressively. But for now, just B tier. Tiberia's another pick that's kind of just been in the same area. I think he's a solid DPS. I think he has his maps where he really shines. And I think he's pretty fun to play. And you can kind of play him in this like hybrid style where you can play back laney, or you can just decide to go in with your team, right? Like go in off of Furia, or go in and secure your own poke kills, stuff like that. But I think same with Strix, he's kind of just like average. He's not crazy. He deserves to be picked on his maps, but you're not gonna really go from every game. Grover, our second healer, I guess, on the list. I think he's gonna be around A, I think. He might move down a bit depending on where I put Genos and Io. But Grover's really good. Deep Roots is still really good. Healing in general in the game is really good. And he's a really good support to pick with Corvus or Genos or Io or Furia. He's like a solid second support or a solid main support, which makes him really flexible. You can just pick him and then be like, we can get Genos, or we can just go Grover by himself, right? So A, solid pick, does good DPS, has really good CC, has a really good ult early game. All around good character. Next up is Io. I'd put her on the same. Right now, she can't be used in the pro circuit, but from what I see in ranked and knowing how she is as a character, she's still up here with Grover and Genos. She's not quite Corvus here. She's kind of just like, she does her job well. She's a really solid support pick if you are trying to learn support. She can be a bit oppressive at times if you're against her with her damage reduction legendary. There's moments where you just feel like you're not doing anything because she has really good early game healing and DR on top of that, so you're not really gonna kill a lot of stuff if she's focusing them with her beam. I'd probably put her below Grover and Jenna's, probably just because I haven't seen much of her in like high level play. Still a really good pick though, really good solo queue pick if you want to play supports. Ying is kind of the same as Grover, but I think because I'm putting Grover, Io, and Jenna's in A tier, I'm gonna leave Ying at B tier. She does the same as Grover in like the way that she can be a main support, kinda doesn't do the job as well as Grover, but you can still get away with it. But her second support is where she shines. Like if you pair like a Jenna's Ying or something like that, she can really pop off. Or if you just run DPS Ying with a Jenna's heal, you can do some work. But in general, she does her job a little bit worse than Grover Io, so I'm gonna put her B tier, her first B tier healer. Next up, we got Jenna's. She's kind of a he'd be a high A, I think. I think he a little bit better than Grover in terms of what he actually can output. His damage amp is really good. He's a really highly contested pick in ranked and in the pro circuit. So I think him and Corvus are definitely the top 2 healers right now. But he's definitely a little bit harder to play as a main healer. You can definitely get away with doing like Inara Jenna's, but it's like something that you need to be comfortable with, right? Like Corvus, Grover, Io, all solid main healers. Jenna's kind of like in a spot where he would benefit a lot from a second healer, but if you're really good at like main tank or you're really good at support and know your rotations, you can get away with playing him as a solo. His damage amp is pretty crazy too, so he's just a solid, pretty good character. Pretty good. Damba. I think Damba probably goes in B. Yeah, I'm thinking that he's higher, definitely for sure. He's a high B, but I don't think he does quite as much as Io and Grover. I don't know. I don't want to put all the supports just like A, but that's kind of how it feels, right? Actually, I'll bump him up to A because we're gonna put Furia at B most likely. So Damba, another solid support. A little bit less common to see him in double support comps, but I think he's still really good with that too. Outputs a crap ton of healing. Really good CC ult, really good self peel or peel for your teammates with his stuns. Nothing really changed on that end. Just a pretty solid pick. Probably slightly worse than Grover, just because I think Grover can output more with less effort. But a little bit safer too with the Grover Vine bug that's currently in the game right now. And then Io, you just have so much more like different ways to help your team, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Next is Furia. I think since Damba, Io, Grover are all E tier, I'm going to put her as a high B. Not super high, but just a little bit marginally better than Ying. I think she does her job really well. She outputs a ton of healing. Her ult is still really good. But I just think the other characters do more in more situations that I see them in. She's super good. You can definitely pick her if, like, let's say Corvus Genos are banned. They take one of these healers. You need like another main healer. You don't want to play Ying or Io for some reason. You just want to pick Furia. She's still pickable in that regard. Still a good pick. Just has less than the other supports, I would say. Next up, we got Grog. I don't think he's... I think I'm gonna put him D tier because he's still not that... Nothing really changed with Grog. He got a bunch of buffs with like his totem and his spirit's domain even, but like I still don't think he is in a spot where I can like say, yeah, that's a character you can just pick. Even like double healer comps, unless you want to go like Maelstrom, but at that point he's just a DPS. But as a support, I think Grog is definitely pretty low on the totem pole. Then we got Saris. She's better than Grog, but I don't know if I want to put her in the same tier as like Ying and Furia. I think she can be pickable as a DPS kind of support, second support pick. If you're good at her, especially, there's a bunch of Saris mains, but I think in general, you're better off going these characters, especially if you're, even if you're trying to DPS, like, you can just DPS Ying or just do damage with Grover and not have to, like, try as hard, I guess. So, above Grog, most likely, but I think I'd still put her down here. She's still pickable in certain situations, I guess, but probably not the best as a main healer because you get countered out by Cauterize pretty easily. Now, back to DPS, we have Dredge. Another pick where he's kind of just like, he does his job well. He has his maps where he really shines, like Ice Mines, Bright Marsh. But in general, I think he, unless you're really good at him, he kind of just doesn't do much or is easily countered. Like, Term is pretty big in the meta right now. If you don't ban Term and you pick a Dredge, you're just going to get siphoned for all your presence, all your abilities. Just gone. His ult isn't really that good. So yeah, kind of lower end than Strix and Tiberius, but I don't think he's bad enough to put him in C. So I'm gonna put him B for now. But yeah, all around has like 2 good maps. The rest of the maps you wouldn't really go for him as much as you would go for like other DPS picks in the same tier. Pip, I'm gonna put C. Same as Saris. He can have his moments where he's good. You can run combat medic and get away with it, but it shouldn't be your first or your second choice. It's kind of like more of a for fun pick for now, the way I see it right now. He has a really good ult, but the rest of the kit doesn't really make up for having, like, doesn't warrant having him on your team, right? So he's gonna chill here for now. Why pick him when you can just not and pick like Damba, right? Damba Furia does big stuff. Either way, they're getting Rezo, right? So I don't know. He's C for now. Same tier as Saris, kind of around the same level. So now tanks. This is where I have most of my knowledge, obviously. So I think Term for now will be an A. Actually, I want to talk about Nara first. So Nara, I'm gonna put her S because I think she's pretty cut and dry, like the best main tank right now. I don't know if she's an S in general, but I want to put her here to signify like how much better she is than the other main tanks. I think she does so much with like Genos right now. If you're good at that combo pairing, she does a lot with Corvus. Damba keeps her up really well. Saris keeps her up really well. Io gives her so much room to like just play the game and run at your like enemy team's backline. So in our S tier, she does a really good job of living and staying on point. Probably the best job out of the like far and wide best job of like staying alive. Second is like Term, but even he's pretty easily like abused. So I think Inara for sure, best main tank in the game, marginally better than Term. Well, there's certain maps where I would prefer the Term, but I think in general, if the Inara is open, you really can't go wrong with picking her. With the current state of the healing in the game and like with what she can do, pretty hard to not have a good, like at least a decent Inara game, even if you're running like a Jenna solo healer. So next up we have Term. He's he got better. He's kind of like back to how it used to be, where you can like either pick the Inara or you pick the Term. Except now it's not so much like 1-for-1 as much as like you can pick the Term, but it's just harder some games. But some games, it's like the optimal choice, right? Like if they have a Dredge, if it's Ice Mines especially, Term is really good. If they have a Nando, which came back into the meta, you can easily run Term with Crush and just either get rid of the shield or just have that presence, make him get Rezo. And even if he has Rezo 3, you still get rid of that shield for 4 seconds if he's running Aegis, and that's enough time for your team to kill him. Super good. Decimation is still really good. His healing is really good. Siphon, if you learn how to use that, is one of the best abilities in the game. Can negate Victor ults, can negate Dredge spam, it just does so much. CC abilities. One of the best tanks in the game for sure. Below Nara, but super solid, especially if you get really good at him. Warrant picking him on most maps and in most situations, even though some, like with high ground, it's harder. But it's just about the knowledge that you can get on the character. That'll make the matchups a lot better. Next up we got Atlas. He's also back. He got some buffs this patch. Made him pretty good. You can run him as an off tank or main tank, I think. And big wall, or the big shield, is still really good. And you can run the other one, the Deja Vu Legendary, but I just think on certain maps the big wall just does so much. And let's see. Oh yeah, his ult. That was the big change this patch. Now his ult gives you CC immunity and you get speed during the ult, which is really big. So now you can just run at people with your ult out, have the presence of like, if I peek, I'm getting CC'd. You can just cancel con ults with it. Like if, you know, he's an ult, you just ult and you're not like ultable anymore. Cancel an R ults or like be immune to an R ult, stuff like that. Just gives him a lot more room to be safe when he's looking for an ult. And then as soon as you get that ult on someone, it's such a big like potential kill there. So really good character this patch. Good counter to Term as well. Good counter to Con. Nando especially. You can rewind his shield. It's a good main tank matchup into a lot of main tanks here. Zen. I guess you're getting into flankers. I'm gonna put him A. I think he kind of the same as Andro, where I don't feel like you need to pick. Well, he's a little bit on the slightly lower end because I think like there's moments where you don't necessarily want to pick him, but I think it's overall solid character. Still has a solid kit. You can die in your ult now or in guillotine, but still, if you get it off, that's just a free kill into a tank. Especially with tanks like Nando back in, it's really good. Nando Rom, it's a really good ult into that if you can get away with doing it without dying, for sure. Maeve, below that, I'd put her B tier. Well, I'm gonna put them both in B actually, because I don't think Zen is too much like Andro. Zen would be a high B. Maeve would be kind of in the same spot, where you can pick them if you need a flank, right? Obviously, like there's occasions where you're gonna want the Maeve. Still a solid character. Benefits a lot from the healers as well. The current meta, like if you get a Corvus Genos or if you have one of them, you just do so much. It's basically, that's the story of like all these flanks. It's like very much healer dependent, I would say. Like if you have a Grover, it's a little bit rougher to play these characters, right? But they excel really well into comps with these pocket picks. Keep you up a lot, keep you up, give you extra DPS, give you extra lifesteal, stuff like that. Pretty good. BK, he's gonna be with Strix and Dredge, but he's definitely on the higher end of B. He's just an average DPS. Like if you're good at Bomb King, you're gonna be good at Bomb King into most maps, right? But there's occasions where like if they have a term, the game gets a lot harder, or if they, I don't know, it's just like he's really good, but he doesn't really benefit too much from, I guess everyone gets benefit from Luminary, right? But it's kind of just different. He's not really oppressive unless you're like a super good BK player, but that's kind of just like every character in the game. He's solid. I'd pick him. He's good stone keep character, good split stone character. If you're good at him, you can pick him. So Barrack, I'm gonna put Barrack at B for now. He's definitely rough this patch though. Unfortunately, he's not so much a counter, like a counterpart to Inara anymore. He's fallen off a lot. He benefits from some characters this patch. Like if you get Corvus and Genos, you can run the Barrack so easily and feel like you're playing last year Barrack. Or if you just have a Genos by himself, you can kind of get away with it depending on the picks they have. But he has a big head hitbox, which makes him rough into the current meta DPS and the current meta with the double pockets and the damage amps and Vivian, stuff like that. Especially if you're on console, he's pretty hard to play, I'd feel like. He used to be, you know, kind of up there with Inara, but now he's fallen off. I still think you can get away with playing him if you're comfortable with him. You know how to use his kit. You aren't against Vivian, Victor, stuff like that. You don't have another option, or you're not comfortable playing Nando or Atlas main tank, But he's definitely on the lower end, which sucks. But he has some use. He's still fun to play if you get a good build, right? Unfortunate. He's A tier. He kind of came back in. He's kind of a highly contested pick for like not having any changes. He's kind of just sprung back up. Solid pick. Mercer is off tank. Don't really think anyone's run him as main tank. You can run him into super aggro comps if you just want to go no main tank and go Rom with something else and just run at their backline like Rom Ash with aggro DPS. Super solid pick though. His ult's really good. His ult gets rid of Dome if they have a Barrack. It gets rid of Nando shields. It's all around super good, super oppressive tank that you kind of need right now because of how backline heavy the game is. Koga. He got some buffs. He got the Leviathan rework, which I thought was gonna be good and I had some fun with, and he got like overall more like number changes, and he got his hook CD reduced by a second. But I just think it wasn't enough. He's super rough to play. Kind of has the same issue as Barrack. You don't have enough tools to keep you alive into the current like DPS pickings and pocket picks, and he's just not easy to play. You can get away with playing him if you're really good into certain comps. If you know you're gonna hit the hooks and get the picks, he's still gonna be a solid pick, right? But I just think it's too hard to pull it off. That I think you're better off looking for the other off tank options. So he's gonna be a solid C, which I think is fair. Vivian, probably the best DPS in the game right now. Nothing has really changed. Jenna's pocket gives her so much damage. Corvus pocket gives her so much lifesteal because she has in-kit lifesteal cards. Pretty hard to play against. She has a personal shield. If you're on console, she has auto, like it's pretty hard to miss headshots with her. The ult is really oppressive, right? Overall, just outputs a shit ton of damage. And yeah, it's kind of been the story for a couple patches now, I feel like. Vivian, super good pick. Pretty contested pick in rank too, if people want to win some games. Okay, so next up is Shaw. He's he's a B tier. He does his job. When you're really good at Shaw, you're kind of doing a lot. You can get rid of so much and make so much pressure with like his kit. But he's kind of in a situation where he's not a Vivian. He's more like a pocket pick. Like if you're good at Shaw, bust him out, right? But he's not a highly contested pick. You can kind of just let it go through the draft, last pick him if they don't have a Cassie or anything like that, or a Vivian, and you feel like playing some Shaw. He's kind of just an average DPS pick. Khan. Let's talk about more tanks here. Khan, I would put, let's see. Khan got nerfed. He got his stun legendary vortex grip nerfed. But I still think he's a solid pick. I don't know if I want to put him in this tier. I think I'd put him as a high B. His ult is still really good. You could go Summer Bullets now. It actually does a surprising amount of damage. And you don't really, I've noticed that I don't really miss having the stun that much because you're outputting more damage now. And I feel like the initial damage, or like at times you can just straight up kill people with the dash. So you don't really need to rely on the CC. It was nice to have, but I think at this point you just run Summer Bullets, you run at people, you still have your shout that gives you immunity, you still have your really good ult, it's a free kill every point fight. If you can hit it, it's still just a solid character. But I don't think he's quite like Rom Atlas here, so I'm going to put him slightly below them. But he's still really good. You definitely pick him. Ashe, I'd put Ashe at that tier for sure. She got like a slight little quality of life change, but in general, she's always been super good. Her ult makes so much space. She's hard to kill. She's hard to catch with her dash not being able to be blocked from the back anymore. You just have to rely on either catching her out in a bad spot or using CC on her like a Grover route, or a Jenna script if she doesn't use her cooldown smartly. But like with Rom, same thing. Like you just dive their backline, right? And you kind of, that's kind of your goal. You kind of want to make it so that like a Vivian or a Victor can't breathe, and just try your best to just kill them, or at least get them out of the fire, get them out of their angles, make them uncomfortable, right? Nando got a big boost this patch. He went from being kind of never picked because like he didn't really have a like good legendary to, I guess it was formidable, but that wasn't that good. So now you have Aegis. Aegis got a buff. Now when you're running Aegis and max CD cards, your shield is a 4-second cooldown, which is pretty big. 4-second cooldown, you force them to get Wrecker, and in general, you just make a lot of space. Like that early game shield presence is pretty massive. You force them to look for side angles. You're kind of like early game, you're kind of like a term with a little bit less pressure because you can't like right click them for 1000 damage, but kind of the same concept. You can run him as main tank pretty well. I don't know how good he is at off tanking. I've mostly played him as a main tank. He does decent damage as well, I guess. Definitely doesn't do what he used to in terms of damage, but you're living so much, and you can use your shield to cancel so much that it makes up for the lack of damage. I feel like he's a really fun pick right now too. I run him with dire need 4, and I think the movement speed on the shield makes him really fun to play. You don't feel like you're just a shield bot. You feel like you're taking space aggressively, kind of like a safer Ashe, I'd say. Ruckus, I think he's in same tier with Makoa. I think he's good. He's good as an aggro tank, but I think unless you're like a Ruckus extraordinaire, like unless you're really confident in your Ruckus, he's kind of harder to play and get the same done. Well, actually, if Consby, I think he's just riskier than these characters. Like these characters, I know what I'm getting into, but I feel like with Ruckus, you either get a free game, a super free game, or you're gonna feed, because they have like Vivian, they have Jenna, they have so much stuff that affects you harder than it would affect like an Ashe that can just shield, or Nando, or an Alice that has this whole kit, or an Ashe that can just ult, right? So I think he's gonna be here, unless you're confident. Maybe he can be a B tier, but for now, I think he just would be a C. Torvald, he's kind of had like a low-key rise in popularity. I don't know how good he would be for ranked unless you're duoed with someone that you can pocket, but he's honestly not too terrible. I think his shield does a lot, unless you already have like a character that can. So if you have a character with a shield and you have a Torvald and they get Wrecker, they're gonna have a pretty rough game, because as soon as you get that, like let's say you have a Con and you have a Torv, you're kind of canceling out both your tanks. They're canceling out both your tanks with one card, so that makes the game a lot harder to play. But I still think, in general, like if you run a Rom Ashe or a Torv Ashe or something, you can get away with like some pretty cool stuff. You can pocket cool characters. You can do a lot that you can't do without this character. Like would be harder to do without Torv. So I think he's an interesting pick. He's something to keep an eye out on for sure. So for now, I'm gonna keep him B. He's definitely pickable though, and I think people should try him out more, especially if you're duo and ranked and you want to like pocket, let's say like a Talus if you're a console player, like a Koga or a Buck even, or an Evie or an Andro. You can enable that player so much more with the Torvald early game shield. Victor, so Victor's a high A. He's a really solid pick. You'd pick him before these characters most likely, but he's not quite Vivian oppressive tier, or Vivian's tier of oppressiveness. Again, benefits from the pockets. He has his life rip that got nerfed, still really good, and you just run that with actual life rip and then Corvus heals, and you kind of don't die early game. Same story with Vivian. Is really good characters, really easy to play, and lay down a ton of damage while surviving more than they should. Solid pick, top 2 DPS for sure. Cassie's an A tier, always kind of solid. Good pick into Shaolin, good pick into the other really good DPSs right now. If you're good at her, you're gonna pop off. Just not quite like, not a highly contested pick. Solid third string option. Leanne, kind of the same. She's probably a little bit more pickable than like Shaolin. She has really good range, of course. Benefits a lot from Jenna's. Benefits a lot from Corvus. Just a really solid character. Always kind of been around there, I think. Kin will be the same as Strix. Probably on the higher end, because if you're good at Kin, I think you can do a lot more in terms of just like holding down angles and creating pressure than Strix can. Strix is really good at being aggressive. Probably better than Kin at that. But I think Kin's overall pressure, like on a stone keep or a split stone, where you know you can't peek or else you're gonna get a headshot for like 2k damage, or if you're like a tank, it's just makes the game so much more hard to play. Whereas I feel like Strix's are more, he's like, they're looking for different angles, they're more distracted, and you can get away with like just living on point compared to a Kin that's just looking at you, or as soon as you go on, you're gonna get a headshot. Makes the game a lot harder to play. But she's still like a sniper. You contest her on some maps. Frog Owl is really good, but some maps you just don't pick them or ban them. We got Drogos. He's kind of not picked anymore. I think he's super hard to play into the meta DPS. They're all kind of hit scans. They're all kind of gonna delete you as soon as you go into the air. Snipers, of course, always hit against them. He doesn't really have a card that stands out to me. His ult is okay. Like obviously, like if you hit it, you get out. That's a 5v4, but I think it's too hard for him to do his job in the current situation. So yeah, I don't think you are really gonna be looking to pick Drog, to be honest, but he's there. Next up, I want to go Willow, since we're talking about Drogos. Willow is actually pretty good. You would think like she suffers from the same problem as Drogos, right? But Willow has so much more tools in her kit to not get manhandled by the by the Leanne, by the Shaolin, the Cassie. And her ult is super good. Like unless you have a true hit scan like a Victor, like Leanne, her ult is pretty hard to deal with because she's gonna be at the skybox. You need to hit all your shots on her. She's gonna have like DR and she's gonna be getting like Damba healed. It's super hard to deal with, and I think it's like so much pressure during a team fight. On top of like that, the dead zone, obviously super hard as a main tank player. You need to play around that. You can't get bursted. Seedlings create a lot of pressure for point fights as well. So super solid pick. She's kind of coming back in. Super pickable. Even if they have hit scans, I feel like you can get away with so much with Willow. You can just play ground. You can flutter for your DR and live and take 1v1, stuff like that. So pretty solid character. Now we're kind of getting into the bad picks, I guess. We're going to put on Evie. Evie's B tier, I think. Solid like Zen. Yeah, but not really like an Andro. You pick her when you can, when it's safe to, but it's a little risky. But she's there. I think it's the same with Zen, but she's not quite like an Andro kind of pick. Imani, I want to put her D tier. I mean, I don't know what happened to her. She's still in the game. No one really plays her. Her ult kind of sucks now. I don't know. She kind of just has nothing going for her. Buck, I guess I'll put him B. Because I'm reserving the C for like Moji. So yeah, Buck, slightly worse than Evie's in. Actually, kind of a bit worse than Evie's in. He got his bulk up nerfed, which honestly was pretty big. I feel like he doesn't do quite as much as he used to. He kind of dies. You benefit from these characters, and I guess you can still run it. It's still a fun pick. You just gotta play it differently, and it's not quite as free anymore, which is unfortunate. Koga, runnable if you're good at him, or if you're a controller player, or if you have a Torval in your team, you can get away with some dumb stuff. You can speed him up during his ult with the shield. You can get him out of tough situations, and just in general, they synergize pretty well together. But aside from that, like you're not really picking a solo Koga unless you're just trying to have fun. Lex, kind of the same. I guess just slightly better than Koga in that regard. You can pick the solo Lex if you're good at him. And you can get away with solo Lex, but and I mean they do synergize well together as well. Speed plus flanks, always a really solid combo. Dama speed plus Lex, really solid combo. But in general, I don't think you're gonna pick him too much. You're kind of better off picking these characters. Do more, like work smarter, not harder, right? I feel like Lex gets away with less or more effort. Talus, I think he'd be in the, like, it's kind of the same as Koga in that he gets a lot of benefit from Torv, and if you're a console player, I guess you pick Talus. I don't know how good he would be actually in like an all console game, but I think in general you're not really looking to pick Talus, especially solo Talus. His ult's still good, he has a good kit, but I just think it gets outshined by everything else that's going on with the other characters. But again, if you get like a good comp, let's say you have Corvus and Jenna or something, no other flanks are on the board, you can get away with it for sure. Moji got nerfed. I think she got changed. I don't know. It's weird. I think she's D tier though. I think she's like a meme character, to be honest. You can get like so much stuff in this game you can get away with, and I guess it might work, but in general, like it's probably not the optimal strat, right? So that's how I feel about Moji. I feel like you can pick it if you want, but you're probably not. There's probably picks that were better before you got to that Moji pick, but I guess if you want to pick her, you think you're a good Moji, pretty solid. Tyra, I'll put her B actually, because Burn Monster and her mark in general does a really good job against the current meta tanks. So I think she's a solid, like a last pick DPS. Let's say they pick like Rom, Ashe or something, and you're like, yo, that's kind of rough. And you bust out the Tyra, you either go mark and they take a shit ton of damage, or you go Burn Monster and they either dive you and get stuck, or can't dive you because you mollied off the entrance. And I think she's honestly pretty hard to play against as a tank player. So solid character, B. Kind of with the other like average DPS. Definitely a super solid last pick DPS character, since you can just like take it and like surprise their tanks with Burn Monster, or just like surprise them with a shit ton of damage. But that will be it. I think that was the last character. So yeah, in closing remarks, I guess, Corvus came out. He was super good, and I don't know, it looks good to me, honestly. I think like tanks are a little bit more interesting now this patch. In general, this patch, it hasn't been too much fun in terms of like meta diversity, but I still think there's a lot going on that you can pick now that you couldn't before. But I just think in general, it's not fun having to play against like Vivian, Victor, Genos, Corvus pockets, and it's so much damage and it's just hard. I don't know. It's rough as a main tank player, but there's light, there's good times. Like Term is back, Barrack is dead unfortunately, but you know there's good things. Fernando's really good this patch. I definitely recommend everyone try Aegis Nando out if you're a main tank player, if you haven't already. Pretty good. And that'll be it for today. Thanks for watching my second tier list. Give me your thoughts. You guys sure did on the last video. Some good debates, some good comments that I read. And if you have any other questions or want me to go more in depth, feel free to leave a comment. I'll try my best to respond if you have like a serious, like, if you actually want to know more about like why I put a character where, or if you want to talk about it more in depth, feel free to check out my Twitch or join my Discord that I'll link in the description. But yeah, that'll be it. Thanks for watching. Have fun in ranked, and see you guys next time.